Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited to be here because today I'm gonna tell you about all books which I read in February. So February finished and I'm really glad that I read 8 books and all of them were really interesting, well paced, page turning, and actually I was really involved in the plot of the stories. And in February I decided to meet with new authors for me because I had tons of wonderful reviews about these stories. I had tons wonderful words about the stories which I read in February, and I decided that yes, it's time for a start meeting with new authors because actually I also wanted to tell something about the stories, wanted to tell people my opinion because most of the time they ask me about such authors, their stories, and they wanted to know my opinion about the stories. And actually I didn't know what to say because I haven't read the stories, and so in this month I decided that yeah, it's time, I need to start. And the first story which I want to tell you today, it would be Colin Hoover and Verity. I heard ton of the wonderful reviews of the story, but actually I haven't read any books of the author because it's not my cup of tea, as I think, because I actually don't love romantic stories with a lot of abusing moments, a lot of moments which describe relationships between people in a couple. So actually I'm a person who loves detective thriller lines, horror books and mysteries. So, and when I understood that in Verity we can have a detective and thriller line, I understood that it would be the book which I will read because I wanted to know about the story. I wanted to meet with Colin Hoover. So what I want to tell, I really was interested in reading the story about Verity. I just felt a lot of shivering moments when we were in a house with our main character, and the plot actually is interesting because we have our main character girl who had a job for continuation the writing serial book of Verity. Verity is a really popular author. She has a lot of fans, she has a lot of wonderful stories, but actually she had an accident and now she just lying without any movement, and actually she can't continue the series, and the publishing house decided that they must have continuation, but they don't want to say that Verity is not good and try to make the continuation of the series with another author, like with the co-writing. And our main character girl, she just decides that it's really a wonderful chance for her because she actually writes some books, but she's not popular, and probably it would be really cool for to be closer to publishing houses. And in one moment she just decided to went to the house of Verity and live there for a couple of days for understanding deeply what's going on, to read the stories, because she actually haven't read any stories of Verity, and she found in one day the diary in the study of Verity, and she started to read it, and we also can see this diary. In this diary we can see that Verity is a really horrible person, that she is rude, she is cruel, she doesn't love her kids, a lot of bad habit she had, and a lot of things which she did all her life with every people around her. So actually from the diary we can understand that Verity was a really bad person, and the main character girl, she started to feel sorry about other family members, it's a husband and a kid, and from the one moment she started to be too much closer to Verity's husband for some her own relationships. So actually I love the thriller line, and for me it was really interesting how it would be at the end, what would be the finishing line. Could the author just make me surprised and understanding what's going on actually in the reality of this story. But I understood that something is not so easy, not so simple, and actually I understood what I will have at the finishing line. And for me it was a big disappointment because for me it was too easy to understand what's going on in this family with Verity and so on. So I put the story 3 out of 5. Story was really interesting, and I want to tell that if I will find another story by Colin Hoover with a detective and thriller line, I will read it. The next story which I want to tell you, it's Turton, The Last Murder at the End of the World. It also the new release of the last year, and actually it was my meeting with the author because I know that he has a lot of fans of his stories, and he has really popular stories which connect with the detective and sci-fi lines, and I decided to meet with the author from the new release. Why not? So, and I started to read The Last Murder, and actually I didn't expect that it would be too much sci-fi, because from the annotation I can see for me that it would be more detective line with the murder, and we need to just solve this to understand what's going on, because we need to find the answer for survivor. The main problem of the story is that something happened on the planet, and we have some survivors on the island, and we have a dome on the island which just protected from the fog. This fog is really strange, and nobody can understand why it happened, what's going on, and why now on the planet we have this fog, and why a lot of people just die. We have just some of survivors, 100 something, and they live there. We just see how they connect with each other, what the relationship, about the things which they do on the island, and we can understand that something strange with them, because most of the people, when they live to 60 years, they must die, and it's like the last year, so people can't live more than 60 years. But we have some people who just owners of this island, they're scientists, and they can live more, and we can see that they are more older than 60 years, and actually nobody asked the question why. The whole story for me was really slow, too much slow, because actually in the beginning I was in a mess. I couldn't understand what's going on, and a lot of time I can see the sentences from the something which start to speak with everybody in head, or just something, and I was just interested in what's wrong here. So after some percent I just understood that okay, it's the artificial intelligence, it is connect with the people there. And for me it was too long to wait the murdering moment, because it just happened after 30%, and I'm like a person who expected the detective line had just a lot of things which didn't connect with detective, and actually for me the detective line wasn't so interesting or a mistake, because actually I also understood what's going on there, why it's happened, and most of the time it was really funny to see for the investigation, if I can say like this, because we didn't have police, we didn't have police investigation, we just have a girl who loved to read stories, detective stories, and she decided to be a detective there, because they have a one moment that if the murder wouldn't solve and nobody find the murderer, the island will die, and everybody will die there, because the dome will just fall down, and the fog will go on everything. So actually I put the story 3 out of 5. It was an interesting meeting with new author, and I heard that a lot of the time the author like mixing the genres, so that's why I will think about the next his story, but I don't say that I wanted to read it in the nearest future, because for me it was like okay. The next story which I want to tell you, it's Tender is the Flash, and it's an anti-utopia story which can tell us about the future when something happened with all the animals. The virus was such horrible that people decided to kill all animals, because you can't eat them or you can't just infect from them. So now we have a reality when we have just people without some animals, but we have some birds, and I had a question about the birds, but they also didn't give me the answer. So actually in the story we have like a horrible story about the future. What will people do if we won't have meat from the animal, and how they decided this problem. And in the story they also just create and imagine the situation when people just started to have farms with the humans who just would be like farm animals, and all the story is just really bloody, horrible, depressed story which just can tell us about the construction of the farms, about the killing, about moments of society, about the thinking of this problem. Is it the problem for somebody or not? About some dilemma, about some other moments which just can give you ideas about thinking what it be if. Actually, I didn't like the story. I like anti-utopias books, and I have some of them in my favorite list, but mostly this story wouldn't be there because I expected more from this one. I expected more normal descriptions and normal explanations about the situation, about the moments, how the people just fight with themselves, about the news that they could eat meat, and what they will do next, and how people decided that everything is wonderful and okay. And for me, it was the story like writing just a trash just for trash, something like that. I actually not enjoy the story, and I want to tell you that I put this 3 out of 5, and it was like less 3 than books which had before, because I actually read this fast. It's a small story, but actually without any wonderful ideas for me, like for anti-utopia books. It was just trash and bloody meat everywhere. The next story which I want to tell you, it's a classical detective. It's Murder Must Be Advertised, and actually it was also my meeting with the classical author. I actually haven't heard about her. I read a lot of books of Agatha Christie, and a lot of people said that Dorothy Sayers, she's like Agatha Christie. They were friends, and they had meetings in one detective club, and it was really interesting to read about life of the author, about her connection with other detective writers. And actually it was really cool to understand that all this detective society was really close. They decided to make some rules of writing the detective, to decide to make some ideas. They just share these ideas, and most of the time you can see some ideas in different books of different authors. Because of that moment, they had a detective club. So, and in the story Murder Must Be Advertised, it's a really interesting story, which for me was a mixing of stories Agatha Christie and stories of Woodhouse, because it was detective story with a humor which really was connected most of the time with the main character. And the situation, it was really interesting because we have an advertisement company who all the time worked with the big companies for making them adverts, making them some slogans and so on. And in one moment one of the workers just fell down from the stairs and died, and a lot of people start to say that something strange happened. It couldn't be in reality, so probably somebody helped him. But after the coming our new character, and the main character, who was a rich person, and he decided to play a detective. For me it was like this: he just showing us the life of this company, the adverts, how they do the advert company for the big companies, for the big products, and about the relationships the people who works in office. And the second line, we had the main character who all the time was somewhere. I actually want to tell that I put the story 4 out of 5. It wasn't bad, but I most of the time didn't understand the humor line because things which the main character did for me was really strange, like he was jumping all the time or doing some stupid jokes. They were really not so funny, and for me it was like he is like I don't know, he's like a dude who wanted to be like the great for this company, but actually he's not. So I think that I will continue meeting with the Dorothy Sayers books because the detective line wasn't bad. So the next story which I want to tell you, it would be Venom in the Blood, and this story which connect with spiders. For me, it was really interesting story, not from the detective or thriller line. It was interesting from the nature, because all the time I had a description about spiders, nature, some poisoned herbs, some poisons, other moments. And for me, it was more interesting because all the time I just Googled some photos, I Googled the information and facts which connect with the spiders or with some poison moments, and it was really interesting for me because I love such a working process when I have in my head when I'm reading the stories. But also the plot of the story Venom of the Blood wasn't so bad. It was interesting about the small town when started happen something strange, and all the strange killings just connected with the spiders, with the moments, how they live, how they killed, how the other moments. And it it was really interesting for understanding why something happened in our nature like this. The main girl character, she's entomologist, and she all the time said some interesting facts, some interesting moments which connect with spiders, with some insects and so on. And actually it was really interesting to feel the vibe of the show Bones, because I love Bones. It's one of the favorite shows ever. And actually, yeah, I put this story 4 out of 5, and this is Syria, and I wanted to read next, so I have plans for continuation. So I really love this. The next story is really interesting and strange. It's An Hour of Crows. It's a story which just connect with some mystical witch moments which we can have in reality, because in the main line we have a life of a girl, and we can understand that she is really unhappy child, because from her childhood her granny just took her somewhere for making some magic, and this magic was really interesting because she just like talk with the death and just try, and she can survive a person from the death just once. And a lot of people in this small town just ask her for help, but nobody love her actually because of this magical moments too. So the situation is really strange. We can also understand that our main character girl, she has problems with her family, not only with granny, that in the family they had a moment of the car accident where her sister was dying, and nobody just know why it happened, and it was just struggling over lower level people and the high level people in the city. So actually the story we just can't I can't explain because it's so difficult. There are a lot of aspects which I wanted to tell, but if I will tell it would be a spoiler, so it would be more interesting if you try to read this story. If you love witches, if you love some magical moments, if you love secrets of the family in the small towns, you just need to pay attention to the story. I put this 3 out of 5 because actually I expected from the story more magic, more depressed moments, and in the beginning I really had it, but when I read more and more until the finishing line, it started to be like a small detective story. So, and the last 2 books which I want to tell you today, they are both were in the vlog which I had on my channel. The really great stories which I read during my off days, and I really enjoyed them because they were really interesting, they were really magical and cool. So let's talk about Rebecca Ross and Divine Rivals. I heard tons of the positive reviews about this one, and I agree with them because story is really interesting ideas, interesting world, interesting moments which can happen with our characters. And also it's really interesting that it's connect not just with the fantasy, it's connect with the mythology, about the gods, about the war between these gods, why they had this war, why people just involved in it, what happened. And it's really interesting to understand how all this war process just come in, and how our main character will be there too, because our main character, they are journalists, both of them, and they from sometimes just will be there. Also, I love the magical moments here, but I expected that I would have more magic, and this magic was connected just with one thing, with letters which our main characters just write to each other, and in the beginning they actually didn't know they write it to each other. So it's a really light romantic story with a wonderful moments, with really interesting historical and mythology ideas and effects. And actually I wanted to read more about this mythology, about these historical moments, because now something strange happened with the people's memory. A lot of years ago, 300 years ago, these gods, they also were in struggle on the planet, and people just did something, and gods just went down for sleeping, and nobody can remember how they just won. And if you wanted to know, you need to go somewhere to just try to find something with a lot of small elements, just put like a puzzle pieces in one picture. So I put the story 3 out of 5, and I of course will read the second part because it's duology, and I'm really interested in what I will have next in the second part, because the finishing line of the first was really wow and good. And the last book, The Certain Tale by Setterfield, it was a story which I put 5 out of 5, and this is the best story of the February. And I actually didn't expect that I will love this, because I heard tons of the reviews like bad and good, and we have just two groups of people who just a fan and love this story, and people who actually didn't understand what's going on there. It's just a family story about the life of one family in some generations, about their relationships, about the problems which they had, about the secrets, about the things which people actually don't want to show, but they have it. And in one moment, this something, this secret will just push away and everybody will know it. The main idea of the story about the main character girl who just had a job to be a biographer, and she needed to go in some place to write the biography of Vida Winter. Vida Winter is the wonderful and greatest author, and a lot of fans, a lot of books she has, and everybody just wanted to know about her life. But all her life she actually just cheating about this one and didn't say truth about everything what's going on with her and her family. But now she is really old, and she decided to tell the truth, her true story of her family and life. And a really, really interesting story with a lot of facts, a lot of great atmosphere, with a lot of moments when you feel sad or you feel happiness together with the characters. So I really love the story, and I want to say that definitely I will reread this story after some years, because I really love the atmosphere of the Gothical cottage and the atmosphere of the girl's life, because the main characters here, two sisters, twins. So yeah, I told you about all books which I read in February. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found something for your reading, and if you read this story, just let me know in the comments your emotions, your ideas, how many points did you put these books, and of course just give me recommendation about some stories which you really like. Thanks for watching my videos. Bye!